Churches today come in all different shapes and sizes. We have mega churches with tens of thousands of members, some that are in between, and some that are very small with only a handful of people. Today, we're going to talk about these smaller house churches. Joining me today is Pastor Geoff Heth, who leads a neighborhood house church right here in Lethbridge. Pastor Geoff, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here, Nav. Love to be a part of what's going on.
Great. And Pastor Geoff, you have experience with all these different sized churches, having pastored large churches in the 1,500 member range and now a house church. Can you first tell us what some of the differences might be, and why don't we start with the strengths and weaknesses of a large church?
Well, yeah, Nav, just like you said, it has been, quite a journey for me, and we've led large churches and led a small church here now, a really small church. But the large church has a lot of benefits to it. I mean, the children's ministry and youth ministry and the young adult ministry, they are great at connecting individuals there. And the large churches also have some great resources as well, and leadership to impact the community in a significant way. And so I was part of a church in Calgary that, we were able to help one of our youth small groups to build a house for Habitat for Humanity. So we were able to raise, tens of thousands of dollars to be able to do that. And then we started like a housing secure initiative where we helped 5 families move from housing insecurity to housing security. And that's a little tougher to do in like a house church type of thing, but they have those sorts of resources. In the church that I led here in Lethbridge, they were able to give away multiple laptops to schools and start a feeding or a meal program at one of the schools. And that's what big churches can do. They have great resources there. But as a big church, it seemed like we always longed to get smaller and to get people into relationships as well. And you're always concerned sort of about the back door. Are people coming in and not connecting in some way and then leaving? Or are they really growing as disciples? So those are some of the advantages of large church, but also some of the weaknesses of large church.
So we've talked about large churches. Now let's talk about house churches. What are the pros and cons of those?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the smaller churches, like we're a part of here, one of the things that we love is that everybody can be known. In our church, we actually spent, and we're just at the beginning. We're in the first 9 months of our experiment here, but we actually just spent some time walking through our journey of life as couples and individuals. And so you can really know people in that way. There's also true discipleship can happen. And we read a book by Francis Chan called Letter to the Churches, and that's really what spurred us on in this way. And he speaks about how the house church, or the smaller church, in our case, simply church, is a great place and probably the best place for discipleship to happen. In a large church, you want people to get into smaller groups, so this can happen there. And then this is probably a pro and a con, but it's impossible to hide in our church. And so the pro of that is that people can really know you. They can reach out to you. They can love you in this way. And wherever you're at on your spiritual journey, we can meet you there and help you take the next step. And that's the same for me too. People can really know who I am and help me and guide me along in my relationship with Jesus.
Now, you touched about with large churches how they really are able to serve like a vast amount of people and really a different variety. You can see ways to minister to people, like all the way from the cradle to the grave. Can you describe to our viewers how many people and what age groups would be part of a typical house church?
Right. Well, I can say in our church here, we have the people that meet with us, say on a weekly basis on a Sunday morning, which we have young families. So we have, kids from, 2 or 3 years of age up to 10, 12. And then we have some young adults here who would just be in their 20s And then we have people like myself who are empty nesters. So we have quite a good age range, but we only have probably about 20, 25 people that would call our house church home on a Sunday morning, but we're also reaching out to our neighbors. And so, that includes people of all ages. But it's just a bit of a smaller group. So it's really relational in nature. And we would consider people who are seeking or who we're just developing relationships with to be part of, that part of our community in that way. Maybe not part of the church, but part of the community there.
Now, for me, I grew up in church. My father was ordained in the Anglican Church, so I'm kind of a pastor's kid. But he was also a professor of world religions. So it wasn't just Christian churches we were going to. He was invited to guest speak at synagogues and temples, and so I really got to go to a lot of different buildings, but I've never actually been to a house church. So walk me through this. What exactly does a church gathering look like? Where do you meet? What time? Is there worship time? Is there a sermon?
Yeah, that's right. That's good. We meet at houses. So, hence the moniker house church. So you would come over to my house, Nav, and the first thing you'd do is you'd be welcomed in and we have a meal. So we meet right at 10 o'clock. So the brunch hour on Sunday morning right now for our Sunday morning gatherings. We have other gatherings outside of our time on Sunday morning, but we sit down as families and we'd eat meal together for probably about an hour. And depending on the day, we might have communion as part of that there. So it's really around the table. It's really intergenerational. And it's just part of the meal time there. And then we would go into talking about the scriptures that we've been reading over the past week and engaging and saying, what has God spoken to you? And I might spend some time teaching in there, but it would be more conversational rather than just monologue oriented. And we might share a song in that time, or we might share, a truth that God brought out to us, or I might direct the discussion to a particular part of the passages we've been reading throughout the week. And we've been studying through the book of Acts together recently here. And then we might move into a time of either singing or do another type of worship where we're expressing gratitude to one another for what God has done for us. And then we would move into a time of prayer after that, where we're praying for our neighbors, we're praying for each other, we're praying to see, God work and move in our lives and through us in this time. And, that would be, there are lots of flexibility in there, but that would probably be your normal church gathering time.
Now, before the interview started, we were talking about how your church is on the same street as where I used to live. Now your church, Simply Church, I didn't see any signage out there, like even when I'm driving around Lethbridge. So I got to ask you, how do people find out about these house churches? Is it simply word of mouth?
Yeah, it would basically be word of mouth. But like I said, we have probably 4 different gatherings that we're part of. And one of them would be, at the very base level, would be a social. And so this summer, actually, we spent a lot of time just inviting people into, a barbecue or whatever. And that can be people who are followers of Christ and people who are not yet followers of Christ. And we're just building relationships. And then you might move into, a time where we've had this before, where we just have a discussion. And the discussion is, is there a topic, the meaning of life, or one of the fruit of the Spirit, or whatever, where we can just sit around, and whether you're a Christ follower or not, people have thought about love. People have thought about the meaning of life, and we just have a deeper discussion. So you could be invited into, or, express an interest in something like that. And then the gathering is a time that I just described to you there. And that's more relational. Yeah. Like, we're not putting a signage out, like you said, but if you're interested in learning more about Jesus, reading the Bible, that sort of thing, it's a great place for you to engage in that way. And then our 4th sort of time would be more an intentional discipleship time, where there's accountability, where there's, deeper sharing than you would just in the group there. and we can focus on our walk with Christ. So you could get in at any one of those levels there, but basically you'd come into the social, be part of our social group there, and then see if you wanted to take a further step with Christ. If not, that's fine. We still long to have a relationship with you and be your friend.
And you mentioned having a barbecue as one of those tools to invite people, which is great. Like, who's going to say no to a barbecue, right?
That's right, exactly. People love food, so that's a wide open door.
Right. And what kinds of reactions do you get from people when you invite them to house church?
Yeah, most of the people that we would invite to house church, and we have so far, have already been friends or we've had relationship with them. And so, whether they're interested, if they would say, "Oh yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to come check it out." And we've had some people come check it out and say, "Oh, yeah, I don't know if this is for us." And some people say, "Man, I love this. I love the community here." And then people who, are on the journey to getting to know Jesus, some people say, "Yeah, I'm interested in that," or that's a little too much for me right now. And any one of those responses is totally fine. Just like inviting people to, a regular church service. Sometimes people are going to say, "Yep, I'm in," and sometimes people are going to say, "No, it's a little weird for me." So.
Now, we've talked about barbecues. Now, I understand that sharing a meal together is often considered one of the key events at a house church. Can you tell me why is that?
Well, I don't do much of the cooking, Nav. So that's one of the advantages, because if I had to cook for this, it wouldn't be good. People wouldn't want to come. But having everybody bring something, a potluck in nature, you get to try a lot of great food. And so that is really an attraction. And then we see this throughout scripture as well, but lots of great spiritual conversations happen around food, because that's where you're developing relationships and getting to know one another. And so, yeah, it's a key part. And then, like I said, putting communion in that as well, reminding us of the body of Jesus Christ, which is broken for our sake, and his blood that has given us freedom from our sins. It's a fabulous thing. So, yeah, it really is a high point about that, and something that people really enjoy.
Now, house churches do lend themselves well to discipleship. Why is this important, Pastor Geoff?
Well, and this is one of the things when I was leading a larger church that took me a while to understand, is discipleship really happens in relationship. And so when I was part of a church up in Calgary, we planted multiple sites, and we were hoping that people would become disciples just because we were planting multiple sites. So we planted a second site, a third site, a fourth site. And what we really found is we were getting the same results. We were just perpetuating our DNA, which was good, but we weren't getting the type of discipleship that we wanted. So then we got everybody into small groups. And actually, at the church there, we had 100% of our Sunday morning attendance, which was about 1,000 adults, in small groups at the time. But we were still frustrated because we weren't seeing the type of disciples that we wanted to be made. So then we flipped our focus around. And one of my mentors said this. He said, I'm sure it's not unique to him, but he said, if you plant churches, you may or may not make disciples. But if you make disciples, you will always grow churches. And so we started focusing on making disciples, and what are the things that we needed to do to make disciples. And that has some element of teaching and that, but really what it has to do is life on life relationship, where you're mentoring people just like Jesus did with his disciples. And it seems simple when you put it that way, but really it takes this deeper sort of relationship. And so that's what we're attempting to do in Simply Church, is focus on the relationship, not just the gathering, if you will.
Now, do you have any plans to expand your neighborhood house church? And if so, would that mean having someone volunteer to step up to invest time to lead this in another home?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great question. In our discipleship growth in our understanding, there is this idea that Jesus gave to us in Matthew chapter 28, that we should go and make disciples of all the nations, teaching them to obey all the things I've commanded you. And so our definition of a discipleship would be one who hears the voice of God, obeys, and then teaches other people to do the same. And so then our hope is that, yeah, as we teach and as we reproduce, as Jesus Christ calls us to in this disciples, that there would be growth, and then there would be, other churches that are planted in houses outside of this doing the very same thing. So our hope, our prayer is that this begins a movement of, discipleship gatherings, really, house churches, which we've called Simply Church. So yes, we long, but God has given us disciples here, and we're growing them in that way. And if other people come and join us as well, we are hoping that they will continue to, reproduce other discipleship, mentoring groups.
So raising disciples. So when your house caps out, then what you've planted into these people is duplicatable, and can just grow and grow and grow. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's right. And I think what we want to use is the word organic, but I've been frustrated sometimes to understand what that means. And I've been thinking about it. It means three things. It's simple, it's relational, and it's repeatable. So Simply Church is simple, it's relational, and then what we do here is repeatable, and how we build disciples is repeatable. So anybody can do it. You don't have to be a trained pastor. You can just be somebody who loves Jesus and spend some time with his followers.
And that just seems so simple. Thanks so much for joining us today, Pastor Geoff.
Thanks for having me, Nav. I appreciated getting a chance to talk with you about this.
Geoff Heth leads a neighborhood house church right here in Lethbridge. I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.